Hello again, welcome back to RP-0 America, following the Agathorn 4 towards the moon, which probably isn't visible yet. Oh, there's the Earth again. So, funny thing happened on the way to the moon. I was just 1 meter per second short of the correction, and it was very much just at the bottom of this hydrazine. So I figured I would use this tool to add a little hydrazine, because it was down here. But of course, this isn't aware of the various tanks, and when I clicked, it also dropped the amount of hydrazine in this tank, which is a huge no-no. So I just had to jump it from bottom to full. But yeah, I was just 1 meter per second short of having enough hydrazine to complete that correction maneuver, which is was very lucky and astounding of me. So I continue this super long simulation, kind of all done together, since I can't quick save or anything in a simulation, as Agathorn points out, as a thorny point of contention. The reason I've named this craft and mission after Agathorn, who is a modder for test flight, and is trying to land something on the moon, like do an early soft landing on the moon. And so I'm also trying to figure out how to do that and make a video, because it's something I find very fun and challenging to do in RSS, is to do soft landings on other bodies, and the moon is the first other body, other than recovering something on Earth, say. All right, so the next careful thing we will do. Let me just quickly turn this engine on while it's off to check. All right, so I have just under 2 kilometers per second of delta V, which is pretty healthy. So if I go over here, add a maneuver, so it's going to be 5 days till I get here. I'm actually a little worried about battery power. So if I actually were to spend those 2 kilometers of delta V, you can see what a huge impact that will have on our potential impact. Absolutely huge. It's going to slow us down very, very substantially. The real trick, as I've said in previous videos, is going to be figuring out exactly when to spend it. Now, in my real mission, when I actually go about doing this, after I built the craft and have it ready to go, I can actually just quick save and kind of save scum my way into figuring it out exactly, which I'm perfectly happy doing myself, but during this simulation, I definitely can't. So I'm just trying to figure out when I want to do that burn. So first I'm going to point it. Where are you, sun? There we go. Let's stare into the sun. MechJeb has this nice option I'll show off. I was using it, I used it in the past in order to basically point your craft in relation to the sun however you want. It's in the advanced menu, sun, and then it's either up or down. I can't remember which way the vector. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to point away from the sun. I want my the vector pointing out of the top of my probe core pointed away from the sun, because I want these solar panels to be pointed towards the sun. So let's try that. Let's see how that goes. I could be wrong about the direction. Anyway, I found this out because I was complaining that this option didn't exist, and then of course Sarbian of MechJeb says, "Of course that exists, you fool. MechJeb contains everything." He said it far nicer than that. It might actually be the wrong way. We'll find out. Oh boy, it's just going to consume tons of RCS wobbling around the sun, isn't it? Yes. Damn. All right. Well, it's the thought that counts. Oh, I hate that. That overshoots so much. But anyway, I use this option, which in a much better situation, because it was to point. I was testing out the Saturn IB, Saturn 4B stage for the Saturn, the third stage of the Saturn V, and using it as a fuel depot. And so I was trying to point it so that it could be shaded by various parts of it that I had added on to shade it from the sun, so I had the minimal amount of boil off of the fuels. So let's see. Oof, come on. Okay, so manually, let's try. Actually, it looks like pointing it towards this spot here is going to be not too bad. So just watching these numbers will give me an idea of when it's fairly optimal. Yeah, that's pretty good. Another way to just numerically check how you're doing is to maximize these numbers, which won't go to 1 because of the way they're angled relative to the sun. But yeah, so that's the minimum expenditure I could get. But if you don't have, say, super overpowered RCS or whatever for your craft, then this is a useful way. Go reference point, sun, up or down. I'm not sure which is ideal for my current situation, because I don't know. I can't really imagine how the vectors are being multiplied or added or whatever. Ooh, weird. Jeez. So my pointing this way apparently had an impact on, because the moon is so far away, my impact with the moon, it had an impact on my impact point. So there we go. Let's just adjust that down again. Let me create a custom window because I'm going to need this. Custom window editor, new. I thought I had this open, but it must be in a different save for a different install. So let's see, miscellaneous. Let's give it a window. Let's call it RP-0. Come on, 0 FASA 2. No, let's call it crash. Let's be fun. So miscellaneous, time to impact is important, and suicide burn. Now suicide burn is going to give me some trouble, unfortunately. Whoa, accidentally clicked on the earth. Suicide burn is not going to be the most useful, just because of various changes to how different mods and games work. But eventually MechJeb might get that working more nicely for real fuels again, but that'll take time and coding and things I currently can't help with, unfortunately. So therefore I will not complain. But it's going to make it a little more difficult to do this landing. So first I will warp towards, let me lock this so it doesn't rotate away, and I had it, there we go, warp towards the moon. I want to be before that transition. Looks like a substantial amount of our battery was eaten, that's okay. 15 hours away from that transition. So I'm like very, oh wow, okay, sure, purchase the additional time, fair enough. So my slow, low delta V transfer towards the moon was enough to exceed the 4 or 5 days that I had purchased of simulation time, which is fair enough. Money, the points don't matter. It's like, whose line is it anyway? Because this is just a test. This is a test within a test, which isn't a double negative in this case. So we go through the transition. So now we're going to be getting close to our terminal phase of landing on the moon. So because we're in the moon sphere of influence, it's telling us we are 19 hours away from our crash. So one useful thing to look at is how much time do your engines run for. Let me pop out of, I am out of warp. Why am I not able to engine group ID? No, I just want to turn it on or off again. Maybe, don't know why it's not showing that option. I have oh, maybe I've got the battery. I've got the battery locked. This ran out of battery, and I have the battery locked on this thing. So if I unlock the battery for a brief moment, you can't do this cheat in 1.1, which is going to be a damn shame. I'll have to be an even more obvious cheater using HyperEdit in that. There we go. So now the craft is active and consuming power. So if I activate the engine, 32 seconds. So 32 seconds plus whatever this stage burns for, which unfortunately MechJeb won't show because it's a real fuel in an RCS, so it will not show that, is how low I want to let this get for landing. So I could calculate that because I know how much fuel I have. I could look at the thrusts of these engines, or even, like, that's one reason to do just a basic simulation with your craft in low Earth orbit, right? You can figure out what's the consumption rate of your fuels in game, which you might find good fun for role playing, or you could do it in a spreadsheet. Like nerds and me do. So let's shut this back down because I don't want to, I'm very cautious about wasting that ignition, and I'm going to lock this because I'm a filthy cheater. If you do that in 1.1 or beyond, if you lock the battery and then you have no control of the craft, Nathan Kell made it so well, you don't have any control of the craft. Therefore, you don't, possibly some other coder, it's not blame or credit to Nathan Kell necessarily if he wants to shift that, or if I'm wrong. But you no longer have control of the craft, which includes you no longer have the ability to unlock that battery. A boo to you for trying to cheat. But thankfully, I'm in 1.0.5, not 1.1, so I can do that. All right, so warp closer to the moon. I estimate the burn time of that stage, just a pure mind estimation of like no more than 5 minutes at the most. So I'm going to, it would be ideal, perfectly ideal, to do a true suicide burn, which means, the exact amount of time that this engine burns, plus that this will burn, is exactly the amount of time that I start these before I hit the ground. So that gives the most use of your fuel. In practice, I can't do that because I don't have a good judgment of the suicide burn because of many things. So let's just see how I've got things lit. Okay, I just want to remember to turn that off before I get to the surface or it's going to be too bright. So this is probably going to be a catastrophic fail, but that's okay. I'll just post these videos up really quick because I plan to do a reel. If this is even vaguely close to successful, it means this hardware is good enough for me to actually build and use, and so I will do that. So let's get a little closer to the surface. I'm going to leave myself roughly 5 minutes before I hit the surface to light these. And I have that literally recorded me saying that, which is part of why I started recording these, because it is useful to go back and look at my successes and, more importantly, my failures, so I can see, okay, like right now if I'm like, well, I had 30 seconds left of engines before I hit the ground, so when should I have burned? And I can look back at the video and figure out what I should have done. So 8 minutes to the surface, that's probably a good time for us to start burning. So let us turn on the battery. So in practice, I should have brought bigger batteries to keep these avionics going, or used bigger solar panels, etc., etc. But I cheat. Okay, so now I need to point at, oh, I didn't reset up that node. Well, darn. Okay, let's quickly set up a node for retrograde. Of course, I don't really need a node to see retrograde, but I like it. It's one of those procedural security blankets that I like to have. So you can already start to see the curvature of the moon a bit, and we're pretty much just going to operate on numbers and what we see now. So I'm going to switch to dark mode because I think that looks cooler. Surface velocity, which is pretty much the same as orbital velocity right now, but don't want to forget to set that. So I'm going to point this, and we're going to lose a lot of delta V very quick. And you may wonder, and I may wonder, because I keep doing this, and I don't think I've had a success in my Russian mission or this one of soft landing on the moon yet, because I keep trying to do it before the real timeline when I should do that America-wise. Let's see. So you may be wondering, okay, so this is 2200, and this stage itself has almost that amount of delta V. Let's say it's 300 short. You say, okay, well, we only need 300 delta V, but that number keeps increasing the closer we get to the surface. And so this stage having about 1,000, maybe as much as 1,500 meters per second of delta V is the buffer to make it so I can do a nice, sane, soft landing. So here's hoping. So this doesn't need ullage. So I'm going to wait till that's about 5 minutes. So this time is going to change massively when we slow down. And that's why the suicide burn counter is so useful, because it looks at the calculus, it looks at the math of, okay, here's what your current acceleration is of your engine, and what effect that's, what I'm going to keep saying impact because it's funny in this case, what impact that's going to have on the time to surface. So this number is going to look crazy because it's going to make the assumption as if we're going to burn to the ground using this engine, which has a very high thrust to weight ratio relative to the moon. So that number changed as a thrust to weight ratio relative to the moon's gravity, so your weight on the moon. So ready and pow. So when this number is negative, that's bad. So positive is good. So this is we're going to bleed off a very, very substantial amount of our speed. We have no more ignitions remaining, therefore there is no reason at all for us to not burn this stage to completion. No reason that I can think of. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to burn until this stage is out of delta V. And the only reason I could do this with an Agena was because I had a very heavy lifter that was able to lift most of an Agena into orbit, and I have a very small probe. If you have a smaller, shut that off because that's lie RCS, I cheated that in. So there we go. So now that's the time to impact. It's much larger than it was before. That's an honest number. You know, if I don't burn any engines, that's what speed I'm going to hit the ground with. So, okay, let me release my craft. And see, the reason I set up this little thing, despite the fact that, see this little ring? It's actually a procedural interstage I used so I could, unlock these tanks. So I could do this because it looks beautiful because it's sitting on, look, this craft is being supported by something. It's not just sitting on little engines, which look crazy, because that ring was just there purely to make this look nicer, to support it. So now, if I turn this on, those numbers, ooh, interesting. Those numbers may be real. That may be a very bad sign. So this number is going to do crazy things, and I'll explain why. It's definitely not like Sarbian's fault or anything like that. So it's because where I'm going to hit the ground is rapidly and unexpectedly changing as I slow down. Here, let me focus on the craft itself. because the point I'm impacting is changing hugely, and that's what this is calculated based on, where you're actually going to hit the ground. And because that's changing so much, this number is rapidly shrinking. Also, these things may not calculate nicely because of the fact that I'm using RCS for this. It's not even showing me the delta V of the stage. So all kinds of little things that could probably be fixed with somebody who kind of is a specialist in this type of code. But Sarbian is too busy to fix that right now, understandably. These are all just bugs you'd really just run into in Realism Overhaul because of crazy things that Real Fuels does. So normally if you had like a lunar lander, like a LEM lander, or something with like a real engine that throttles and things, this suicide burn timer would be much more meaningful. In practice, for us right now, I'm basically going to ignore it. Actually, it's just so meaningless that I'm considering just entirely getting rid of it. But like I said about the numbers of how much delta V I have in the stage, that this is good. This is good news, considering how we're not going terribly fast. So I'm just going to go warp closer and closer to the surface. Sure, I'll grab that science just so it doesn't get in the way of me warping. So because I don't have a suicide burn counter. Oh, actually, one other thing I can do, say just see the engines can be throttled. See, it's there. Come on, there we go. See, it's using just a little bit of pulsing. So see, that's a nice thing about RCS thrusters like this. And there's also a 1 kilonewton engine which you can use in a similar way, which might be classed as an engine in terms of the way MechJeb thinks of it. So it might be a better thing to use for this in this case, because then it'll give you nicer numbers there. All right, so 3 minutes to impact and I'm moving half a kilometer a second. So in practice, if I wasn't recording this, I would think it was, for my real mission, I think it'll probably be a good idea for me to actually set up a spreadsheet and do the math, because I can look at what is my actual acceleration because of these engines, what is my time to impact, what is my speed, and I could calculate the real suicide burn count from that. So I might end up doing that in reality when I go to land myself. In practice, I'm just going to keep pulsing things until we get all the way down. Actually, this is a good time to break, about 50-minute video. So what did we do in this video? So you saw me at the end of cheating my approach to the lunar surface by 1 meter per second. You saw me burn out the rest of the Agena stage, all 2 kilometers per second of delta V, and throw away its avionics also by cheating, by having the battery on this craft locked. What else? So then we threw that away, and then you saw the beginning of this approach and how I realized that the suicide burn counter is currently not useful because everything on this is RCS, and MechJeb just doesn't quite realize that we're using Real Fuels RCS, which is fair. It's something that can be updated in the future. Yeah, thanks for watching. We're approaching the lunar surface. Next video we will touch down on the lunar surface. Whether or not that's a soft landing will entirely depend on my my skills and ability. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.